Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us here today on USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, and our show today is The Art of Creating Mental Health Wealth. Our topic of conversation is going to be, how do we get back to that commitment that we made to ourselves late in the year last year, at the beginning of this year? Many people have already fallen off the wagon, so to speak, from their commitments that they made for change. And we're going to be exploring this topic with the star of our show, JENETTA Barry, and the Epiphany Process. Jeanette is joining us from Kenya in Africa, and she is a very important member of our team here at USA Global TV and Radio. And she recently was crowned Queen Bee Speller. Let's welcome her and find out what she's been up to. Hello there. How are you?
Hi, hi. Wonderful to be back again, even though I'm
Yes.
looking as though I'm floating in water or something.
Well, we can see you and we can hear you clearly, so that's what matters. And I just want to let our audience know that for people who are tuning in about regaining your confidence and feeling better with facial aesthetics, our guest had to reschedule, so we will be exploring that topic. Actually, we can explore some of that today. We can have a little chat about that as well. So that also comes into some of the decisions that people make for the new year. They want to look better. They're going to get a little Botox, a little here, a little there, a little nip, a little tuck, and then maybe they decide to get it, or maybe they change their mind. But people do make all kinds of commitments, and then for whatever reason, they just don't follow through. What are your thoughts about this, Janetta?
Yeah, I think it's pretty well standard and par for the course at this time of year, where everybody goes, okay, so what didn't work last year or this year I'm finishing, let me remodel myself so that I get myself absolutely right for 2023, and then I'm bound to be more successful. I'll like myself better, others will like me better, I'll appear more successful. And so that's where a lot of people come from when they remodel themselves at the end of the year. And all that I've just said comes with a lot of judgment, internal judgment, and in fact, the judgment is that I'm not good enough. So if I make these new commitments so that I can feel good enough and others can perceive I'm good enough, then I'll get good enough, and then I'll be successful, and then everything will go right. And in actual fact, those are the very ingredients that can set you up to fail. And that's what we're going to chat about today.
Thank you so much, Janetta. You hit on something that I've been talking to myself about, that angel devil kind of thing. And it's always about my weight. I've shared that, just have this obsession about my weight my whole life. I'm never thin enough, I'm never lean enough. And I just said to myself the other day, what if you just accepted yourself the way you are? I mean, you're not in a relationship, you really don't see anyone in person. Like, why can't you just say to yourself, okay, this is good. I'm strong. I'm healthy relatively. Why can't that be the win? And of course, that settled in for a little while. And I thought, yeah, that's great. And then a little later, I was like, yeah, that's ridiculous. So, have you ever experienced anything like that yourself or with clients?
Yes, it's a very normal human thing. And because what I'm hearing is you were beating yourself up for feeling not good enough about yourself. So now you're going to feel good about yourself. Now you're beating yourself up because you're going, well, I'm not feeling good about myself, and that didn't work. So there's a whole load of beating up oneself, and we all do it. Because one of the first things that I observed in all that I've done is that in being human, there are going to be times where you like yourself and times when you don't. It doesn't matter how great self-esteem you have, because that is the ebb and flow of life. And it takes the fine tuning. I always say it's like being a two-way transmitting and receiving radio set. And when you're fine tuning yourself, you're going to go off the dial of that station that you've now decided you're going to be in. And there'll be times where there's distortion and times where where one can't quite get it on that dial. And that is life, because it takes going away from being in that place of being on the dial to fine tune even better. And the day I started realizing it was the day that I started going easier on myself. And when I do fall off and go, this and I'm this and they're that and this is that, I understand that I'm on the path to retuning back into that two-way transmitting, receiving dial that is the energy, light, and vibration that I am and we are. And yes, in answer, I have clients doing this work with me all the time. And it's those skills that I give them so that they don't need me anymore. I'm no longer the Pied Piper with them following around. They can start asking the questions to get themselves fine-tuned and even more accurate in the conversation that they hold inside themselves. When you can do that, it doesn't matter that you stop doing it, because you've got the skills to come back into that center again and do it even better than before. So it takes going away from it to fine tune it and get it even more and more accurate and heart opening.
And that must be so liberating to go through that process with you, and for you to see that your clients are on their own and able to stand on their own 2 feet must be very rewarding as well. And, Jeanette, is something that I want to share with you as well is, for me, I'm very disciplined and structured. What a surprise. And when I think about people in the military, they're very disciplined and structured. And I was married to a recruiter, and they love to get people in the military because of that structure and that discipline. And yet I live with someone who is the exact opposite and feels that at a certain point in life, you don't have to have structure and discipline. You can eat what you want, you can do what you want. And I really struggle with that, because I feel like when you have structure and discipline, you get a lot done. You feel very accomplished or empowered at the end of your day. And then you have a routine that you basically feel like you're, and I'm just speaking myself, I feel like I'm a productive person because I put things out there and I get done what I need to get done. But at the same time, I do beat myself up constantly. So I'm not sure which is the right way to live. Is it no structure, very structured, somewhere in the middle? Because I don't really find that people who don't have the structure are in the middle. I feel like they're kind of off the chart, either one way or the other. So what are your experiences based on your expertise in this area, helping with people?
I love the question. And I love that question because there are different reasons for that structure. So let's take the Army or the Navy or the services as an example. To get into that place of being fine-tuned in that structure, a lot of internal and, well, mostly internal talk is eliminated, and it's eliminated through a different method and for different reasons, so the person is no longer concentrating on what they feel or how they feel or what they think or what they ought to think. They're in that place where they're just automatically doing things without putting reason or doubt or judgment in, unless it's called that they're needing to be to put judgment in there if they've gone up the ranks. And even then comes without that internal self-talk. So the way they are made to become focused is a different method to how we do it in our normal day and normal life, because they really need to become a bit like a machine. But when you can understand that it is, if you're being extremely structured, it means that you're not seeing any value in its opposite. And so what will happen is, the more structured and perfect one tries to be, the more the other side will visit on the journey of learning the value of not having structure. And when you can bring the two together, the structure and the non-structure together, suddenly you find that you can you can deal with what you're focused on from a place of non-judgment and from a place of not being fearful. So that internal judgmental and fearful chatter actually becomes managed. And when you can manage the structure and the non-structure together so that there isn't internal judgment and chatter, suddenly you find yourself being very structured in an appropriate way and very non-structured in a yeah, let me put my teeth in an appropriate way, so that the two become very heart-centered and clear. And you get a feeling, okay, this is the time for non-structure and this is the time for structure. So you can cut yourself some slack from always having to be perfectly right, because there's disservice in perfection. In other words, there's perfection in imperfection, and there's imperfection in perfection. And when you've got the two together, there's this ability to allow things to flow in its ebb and flow without the extreme ebb and flow, in a place of open-hearted acceptance, appreciation, love, unconditional love, and manageability. And that is what I love about what I've been able to step into, so that I can have my times when I'm not feeling in that place of manageability. I've got the ability to bring myself into balance and open my heart again and not be so hard on myself, because that's what we do. We get hard on ourselves.
I love what you just shared, and let me kind of just break it down. So, what I heard you say initially was, in the military, people are very structured because they have a task that they have to do. They've been told what to do, they have to follow orders. And in some ways, it's not robotic, but it's just ingrained, and there's not really room for feelings or judgment because you signed up for this, you need to accomplish that. And outside of that, when we look at our lives, we put expectations, or maybe other people have expectations of us, and the way that we deliver what we're supposed to deliver can be through different routes. So we can be really structured, or maybe we're not as structured, but we still get it done. And in not being as structured, you might not have as much judgment on yourself as you might. So my question for you is that, what if it's not about being perfect? What if it's not about getting that A, or getting that gold star that I always like to talk about? What if it's just about, you have a number of things to accomplish and you want to get them done, and the way that you get them done is by staying on point? And that doesn't mean you have to be on point every single minute of the day. But if you go to the opposite way, where you don't really have a lot of structure, how are you going to get things accomplished and feel good about yourself in terms of contributing to society?
Yeah, because you see, that question came from somebody who's very focused on being on point. So there's more value in being focused on point than not being. So you'll have somebody who'll say, you know, tomorrow's another day, and what you've just said is like blah blah blah, foreign words to them. So it's being able to understand, how can I explain this by way of example. I want a certain thing to happen. Say I've got a project, I've got expectations of it. And unless it's done in this certain way, in this certain time, with being on point and focused and clear and certain, it's not going to get done. So what I do is I look at what it is. Let's take World Jenny's Day by way of example, what it is that I'm achieving. And then I start looking at what my judgment and fears are in not achieving it the way that I have set up my expectations for it to. And so I'll start going, oh, okay, it shows I'm slovenly, or I'm not focused, or I'm a failure, or there's a whole load of lists I'm running that's motivating me to make sure I get World Jenny's Day done. They're there. They're all part of being human. We all run them. Then I have that one where, sitting and watching The View, or picking my nose or whatever. I'm being funny here, but whatever it is that feels just as attractive, I allow that as well. And then it's really quite difficult to explain until you start working it out. It's like me saying, if you go to physical gym and do that machine and that machine and that machine, you're going to feel this, that, and the other. So in theory, I can see that, but it's a lot of hard work and it stretches me, and I don't really want to do it. And I hate those machines and I hate gym and wada. So I'm giving 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't do it. So the same happens when we start working this inside ourselves, where if we're more attached to the outcome than not the outcome, then when we don't make the outcome because we're so judgmental of ourselves, then it's almost impossible to do that outcome with a lot of love, self-love, self-esteem. It's always about, you're not good enough, you're so easily, you've got to, if you don't, this will fail, da 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 da. And as much as those facts are true, they're also not. So it's being able to get to a point where you work out in the mental, emotional gym what it is that is and isn't working. The same as when you get onto a machine, you go, okay, I'm fine tuning, I'm adjusting, I'm learning to love this, I'm learning what doesn't work for me, and I'm learning what does work for me. And you're always fine tuning that. So when you want to achieve something, it's being able to say, what will I gain if I fail? What will I gain if I'm not always focused? And go the other way. If I'm always focused and trying to succeed, what would be lost? What wouldn't work? What doesn't work when I'm always trying to succeed and always trying to be focused and make it happen? What does not being focused and not trying to succeed give me? So we go into skills and techniques and experience and exposure. And when I can go both sides of what will work and what won't work, what happens is when I have that breakthrough, it's almost a breakdown of what I valued as the truth. When I have that breakthrough, whether I succeed or whether I fail, either way will have equal amount of gain to loss. And when that happens and you go, I can go either way. This is what will happen if it doesn't work out, that will work. And this is what will happen if it does work out, that won't serve. When you can do that, suddenly you find that everything becomes effortless. And then that's when the synchronicities start coming in, the appropriate person at the right time, the appropriate happening, because you're in that place of allowing without judgment. So either way, it feels like I can go either way, slightly on either side of that line of balance. You can go either way and you're okay. And it's amazing what you can create when you're in that space and zone where you're not in, it has to be one way. I have to be structured. I have to be there. I have to make sure that I'm disciplined and da, 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 da. But it takes some time to work through, because what's happening is, as I'm talking to you and to everybody else, they're still here. They're still in their brain reasoning. And the important thing here is to be able to come out of reason and become unreasonable and reach into your thoughts and your feelings to join together. And when that happens, you become more intuitive rather than cerebral.
Thank you, Janetta. That was really very deep. I appreciate it. There's a lot to talk about there. I think to really hone in on it, I want to give an example and then have you take what you just shared and apply it to the example, if that's okay. So I work out every day. the same workout. And of course, I work out 3 times a day typically, but this one workout going to this specific place that I talk about all the time, there's only 14 benches, so only 14 people can go. And it's not at a price point that everyone can afford. So it's really an honor, I think, to be able to be one of those 14 people for this 50-minute workout. So, long story short, I don't know what order of sequence that the poses are going to be in that we do on this machine, but I pretty much know they're going to be this, or this in a different way. And so I, whatever it is that they're calling, the coach is calling out to do, I'm taking it to another level. And I just do that naturally. Nobody has to tell me what to do. I just know that I need to push myself, because why am I spending the time and the money to do the same thing and expecting different results? So on either side of me, just as a recent example, I have there are 2 women much younger than I am, decades younger than I am. And during this 50-minute workout, the one woman literally leaves the machine 3 times to go get water with her water bottle. Like maybe we started for 2 minutes and she gets up to get water. On the other side of me, I have a woman who's on her phone. Now, it's almost impossible to do the workout and be on your phone, but that's what she's doing. And I said to myself, it's interesting, no judgment, but I think to myself, why would you spend that kind of money to come here and take up a space that somebody else couldn't get in on, that you're not going to get the results, that you're probably going to tell people that this workout is no good because you don't see the results, but you're not committed to doing the work? And if we take that, again, no judgment, just looking at the situation, if we take that outside of the gym, for example, I would pretty much say that these 2 people are like that in their life, that they're not showing up 100% committed. Now, I'm not talking about that has to be dedication. It's basically you signed up to do something, but you're not putting your whole heart into it for whatever the reason is. And when times are getting hard, 2 minutes in, you decide you need water. You don't need any water. It's in your mind. So it's about having that discipline and focus that then gets carried out through life. And to your earlier comment of I'll do it tomorrow, I hear that on a regular basis. Someone says, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll get to it tomorrow. Well, it never happens. Tomorrow never comes. And there's no magic wand. I hear that too, that there's a magic wand, I could make it all better. Well, there's no magic wand. So when you think of that example that I just gave and how it really applies to life, I don't know that it's about judgment. It's about you made a commitment to do something, but you don't have the focus or the commitment or whatever it is. I don't know what it is. I can't say, I'm not judging. But what are your thoughts about that in terms of this conversation we're having today?
Yeah. It's such a valuable observation you've made there, because the chances are that those 2 people are doing those workouts according to other value systems that don't match them, what other people expect them to do, what they expect it will give them to make other people like them more. So the chances are their motivation of doing what they're doing isn't attached to their value system. And if I leave today with nothing else, it's that when you're doing something that's in your value system, it's so much easier to do. I'm not saying it's easy peasy and always flowing. It's always going to have times where you go, and I'm doing this because let me think. But I've noticed that more and more people, if they're trying to achieve something because it's somebody else's values and they think that they will get more approval or more something out of it because they're doing what other people expect, or they're doing what they expect will help them feel better about themselves, but it's not in their value system, glasses of water and doing their phone is going to be far more attractive, because bet your bottom dollar that's more in their value system. So it's finding what inspires you in your value system to be able to work out. So by very good example, I hate gym. It's not in my value system. I find it mindless and boring and all sorts of things. But you put me in front of a dance class where I'm having to use my creativity and the music is melding into what I'm doing and the movements. And sometimes I'm choreographing and I'm getting all that exercise. Suddenly I have energy for the whole universe. Suddenly that glass of water is not so needed. Suddenly finding out what's happening on my phone isn't an issue. So really, truly, if anything you've set in this time of transition from one year to the other is according to other people's values, or according to your judgment and fear value, the chances are you're not going to succeed. The moment you start setting yourself goals because it's what makes you feel inspired, and that it really backs and endorses who you are, and it leaves you feeling amazing even though you've had to push yourself, doesn't mean you don't push yourself like you do, Dr. Jacqueline, in the gym. I'm sure there are moments where you're going, oh, I'm hating this, but your value system is saying, but I'm going to love how I feel at the end. And that's the same with anybody who's doing anything that inspires them. They will go through those pain thresholds. They'll go to the ends of the earth to make it work. And World Jenny's Day for me is a prime example of that. I have this amazing epiphany process. But for me, working with theater and performing arts and cinema and song and dance and is the be all and end all for me. So when I can attach my value system to creativity, to my next closest love, which is working this work, and marry them together, amazing things happen. And I achieve things to levels that if I was doing other things, I wouldn't be able to find the energy to do or the inspiration. And that's the secret, is finding out where your value systems sit and how to embrace them, love them, utilize them, and peel away all extreme judgment and fear.
Wow, I love the way you just summed that up. That was brilliant, and it leads me to share something else, especially when it comes to the turn of the calendar, the new year. How many times people will make promises to their partner about doing something, and then you hear, "You promised me you were going to lose weight. You promised me you wouldn't work as much. You promised me you go blah blah blah." And meanwhile, the other person isn't doing what it was they said they were going to do because it's not in their value system. But yet
Exactly.
we want it to be in our, we want them to have our values, and then what happens is it's a lot of clashing because we're not on the same page. So if we look at why are we asking our partner to do XYZ, what's coming up for us? Is it that we're not attracted to the person anymore because we're attracted to someone else, or we don't like ourselves anymore, or we've outgrown the person, just as an example? And so I think it is important to look at what our values are and where we find our passion. And you just mentioned where I have my passion, where you have your passion. And other people might say, wow, I'm not in alignment with either one of them. My passion is sitting on a couch, for as another example. And so I think that when we're in our lane, when we found what it is that is important to us, that's where we have to really stand our ground. And if we are in relationships with people who are on a different page, we have to explore, hey, can we compromise and come together? That's a different show, obviously. But I think that that's something that happens a lot with commitments that people make for the new year. And then it ends up that they're disappointing themselves, they're disappointing their partner because they didn't really want to do it. So if we think of those two young women who were in that gym, maybe they got that as a gift from somebody for the holidays, or maybe they just started dating someone and they felt like they need to get what, I don't know, whatever the answers are, but they clearly were not showing up for themselves. And that's what happens is we don't show up for ourselves because we don't know what it is we value, or we're confused about what's important to us because somebody told us that we should feel XYZ about something.
I love that. You've hit it so on the head. And in fact, this is where my next love is. In the next while, I want to get more and more into the schooling systems, because we're part of a schooling system in the Western world that actually formed from the learned few. And so the common masses weren't given party to learn like this, and so those learned few got their value systems, and the value systems of the learned few, let's take where it really became a big thing, was during the Industrial Revolution. So the learned few realized that for the Industrial Revolution to work, they needed far more learned fews, or less views and more learned people who could be scientists, um, and mathematicians. And so the science and math and so on became the most important thing to learn with the learned people. And then after, and that helped the Industrial Revolution to become revolutionized. And then after that, it became the thing that it shouldn't be just the learned few are learning to read and write and do all the things that the learned are doing. So everybody should have that equal opportunity. So everybody was brought in to take a structure that was really based on the Industrial Revolution. Even the way we teach our children, they're taught in batches of ages, like eggs or anything that's been batched in a factory. And the bell rings at a certain time. That happened in the factories. Everything is structured to how the Industrial Revolution operated. And the most important thing was math and science. So when people came in and went, but math and science isn't in my value system, I'd rather cut my throat. This morning, by way of example, I was sitting, I received royalties for some of my father's songs. And the music company in LA was asking me to fill in a tax form and read all the legalese in that. And I'm sitting there going, I'm an artist. I can't, it's like I'm reading German. I cannot do it. It's just not in, well, I could if I really applied, but I don't want to. It's not in my value system. So I had to go back to them and say, please help me, because I haven't a clue what I'm reading here. I'm just reading words. And that's what happens to the majority of children in schools, because they're being pushed that maths and science is the be all and end all in academics, and that there's no value in creativity. By way of example, it's a nice pastime, it's a nice indulgence, it makes you an all-rounder. Well, it doesn't, because those children are being forced to do things not in their value system. And that is when communication gets very skewed. And as you were saying, when one can communicate, here's another thing: when you're doing what you truly are inspired to do in your value system, and you learn to communicate because you're excuse me, because you're inspired, you start learning to understand other people's value system. And when you start seeing other people's value system because you're in your zone, suddenly you learn how to speak in their value system. That communication is profound. And I've watched it when I'm with very spiritual people. Suddenly I'm speaking the same thing in their value system, in spirituality speak. When I'm speaking to very, very cerebral clients, especially men, suddenly I find I'm talking in their value system, and it sounds like I'm really quite scientific, which is quite amazing considering I am very creative. But that's what happens when you're in your value system, in your zone. When your heart is open, you can start hearing and listening and responding in other people's value systems. So it's no longer, I want you to lose weight from next year conversation. It's listening to the person and their needs and wants and yours, and sharing and coming up with solutions and understanding and empathy. And suddenly the value systems of both people shift, and there's a compromise, in a sense, as both are on the same page from different value systems.
Thank you so much, Janetta. And a follow-up question I have for you is, so you talked about when people have different value systems and you can learn from them, right? And then you start to adapt to some of the things that they're doing or take on yourself. What if it's a situation where you live with the person, you're married to the person, you're in a long-term relationship, and all of a sudden you realize you have different values? Can that relationship survive that?
Well, to say to you right from the get-go, opposites attract. So there's a reason you're with that person. Um, I mean, this is a whole different program again, and I'd love to address this on how to balance out relationships and how to deal with the fantasy and nightmare with a romantic relationship, because this is what happens is anything we judge in ourselves as being either superior or inadequate, we are going to attract people and circumstances in our lives that reflect that very stuff we're either admiring or despising. And until we understand that there's value in their being like that, so that we can change our internal conversation about what they are and aren't being, then you start finding that when you've changed your internal conversation about what you judge, or what you judge as valuable, or what you judge as not valuable, when you change that internal conversation, you'll find that the conversation with that other person who is being extremely whatever shifts, because you've shifted. And so when couples come to me and say, our values have changed and our conversation has changed, the very first thing they sit down and understand is that these sessions are not necessarily to save their relationship, but they are necessarily for them to be able, or necessary for them to be able to have new conversations with each other that will serve for either their staying together or their parting. So that either way it goes, there'll be powerful conversations that are centered, present, open-hearted, understanding, accepting. And that is the secret, is understanding the gift that we give each other in a relationship, even at the times when probably, because even in the most solid of relationships, there's times where you want to wring each other's neck when you go, "Argh!" Because that's part of being in a relationship. But it's how you handle it, and especially how you handle your internal talk about all of that, that will create a conversation that is inspiring, whatever happens.
Thank you, Janetta. Of course, more great points that you brought up. And I just want to also add that many times in my experience, when we're doing that work to understand ourselves and our values, or we're going to a therapist, that might really mean, whether we like it or not, that we have to let go of certain things, whether it's things that we're doing, things that we've been thinking about, whether it's the people we're with. And I feel that that is in and of itself a reason why people don't want to do the work. And of course, that could be a whole other show. But when we do the work to understand our values and understand who we are, what motivates us, that things come up that maybe we suppressed or we just weren't aware of, and that to truly get to the other side, we have to let go of things.
Well, again, I can say to you that that's what I thought until I started working this process, that it's about have to and got to and should do and ought to. But the moment we're using those words, we're back into judging ourselves again. So when you can skillfully get to a place where you're not in have to, where you don't have to let go, it happens on an unconscious level. When you're working the work on a conscious and an unconscious level, and you have that breakthrough, suddenly there's no have to, got to, must to, ought to, should do, all those judgments that hold us down. Suddenly there's a spontaneous wanting to. It just happens. You suddenly find that what you were charged up about and going, and they have to be, and it must, and it's got to be, and suddenly you're sitting there going, it's okay. and I'm okay, and I'm accepting of that, and it's all cool. And that have to just naturally peels away, and you're suddenly allowing. And when you allow, you're in your genius. You're not being distracted by the have to, got to, must to, should do, ought to's. You're in that place of allowing, and that is when you access your inner wisdom and wise words start coming out your mouth. It is the most amazing experience.
I think that's really good that you clarified that. Thank you. I think it's not about have to or must to. There's a realization that it doesn't work, and you accept the fact. I remember when I was at a marriage counselor with my ex-husband, we discussed this, that, and the other, and the counselor looked at me and said, "Have you had enough yet?" And I thought, I really have had enough. And so it wasn't about you have to do this. It was the realization that, hey, this doesn't work. And I'm going to let go of it because it doesn't feel right in my body. But you fight it for a long time, because what is life going to look like when you let go of certain things because it's not in alignment with who you are? And what's on the other side is opportunity. That's what I found. Things that you never even thought could happen for you because you were holding steadfast. We do have a comment from Katie Stelfox. Hello, thanks for being with us. Nice to have you. So as we look at the topic for today, regain your confidence and feel better, we are talking about that. We're not talking about facial aesthetics, but we are talking about that confidence. Yeah. And so just as if we touch on facial aesthetics as we close out the show, there are so many opportunities to feel and look younger, better, different, whatever the word might be. I don't really like better. And it's a matter of embracing, can I accept myself the way I am? Or if I were to get something done, some work done to my face, how would that make me feel? And I know for me, for 27, 28 years, I was getting Botox and this and that and everything else. And now I got the number 11 done because it was turning into a 17, but I got that done. And the rest of it, I just said, no, I'm done with it. I'm just done with it. And then coincidentally, that's for the last 3 years. As I was going to the place where I work out, I do a 20-minute walk before I go in. And there's this retail space. And I thought, wow, what is this med spa? Let me look it up. And it turns out they offer Botox and all kinds of wonderful things. And I started thinking about it, thinking, wow, that's so cool. It's right here. I could just get this done. So I'd love to have you touch on how we become at peace with our face, for example. Let's not talk about our body, but just our face. And is there benefit to maybe having some fillers or some injectables to help us regain our confidence and feel better?
Yeah, such a good question again. And obviously one I've asked myself often. I'm 64 years old, and fortunately I'm fairly photogenic, and a lot of apps these days kind of soften all those lines. But I am quite weathered because I've been through a lot in my lifetime. And I've often asked myself, what is that all about? So if I was to do it, what would it leave me feeling? Well, it would leave me feeling that other people accept me for only being one way. And so what I did was I started listing what the advantages are of not having a line-free face and looking youthful. What does that give me? And I used my mother as an example because she became quite weathered and lined as well. So the chances are I'm going to look very similar to her as I get older and older. And I remember one of the things that she had worked out was that her eyes were her strength. And when I watched people interact with my mother, and my mother was this bubbly personality with these beautiful eyes, nobody noticed how weathered and lined she was. And I've noticed that the more that I work on what is working for me, rather than concentrating on what I need to change that may not be. And of course, this is in other people's value system. We're in a society that thinks that white-haired, old and wrinkly means you're an idiot, because sometimes people talk to you like you're gormless. And that's a societal change, because in other societies and tribes, that aging creates respect. So for me, I've set the intent that the more I speak my truth and my light from my youthful energy inside me, and I have a lot of youthful energy, I have my mother's eyes. When I go from there, that is where the youth is sitting in me, and that's what gets noticed.
I really applaud that. And that's a certain level of confidence and being comfortable in your own skin. And
Well, I wasn't, but I've had to work on it, because it was, when I started aging, especially as I had cancer um, that where all my hormones changed, and they wanted to give me HRT, and I said, I'm not doing it. And then they said, you're going to age very rapidly. And I went, well, I'll age really rapidly. I'm not taking artificial hormones. And so I wasn't, and it took a lot of working and adaptability and sitting. And even now, sometimes I go, I had somebody say, please come on stage live. And I'm going, but they're going to, and I had to go, it's the eyes and that youthfulness that they will pick up. So I still have to work on it. It's a lifetime story. It's like, as I said, it's like daily gym. It's a mental, emotional, spiritual daily workout on all the things we have charges about, to become fit and focused and open-hearted and loving about it.
I agree. I agree. I was thinking back to when I first got Botox, and it was because a girlfriend had told me that my forehead looked like a newspaper. There were so many lines on it. And then I'm not really sure, for all those years and all that money, by the way, that I was doing it for myself. I think I was doing it so I could feel like I was worthy of being loved, if that makes any sense.
It
Like
makes so much sense.
if I got
And
rid of the wrinkles, that I would be lovable.
And we all do it. It's a very human way of being. So it's not about eliminating being like that. It's learning how to accept that it's human, and then how to manage it from a place of open-hearted understanding and acceptance. And when you can manage those conversations, they'll always be there. Everybody has them to some extent or another, unless they're extremely in the other direction, where they don't care a toss what anybody says. They also would require to bring themselves into caring what people say, because that's too much the other way. But for most of us who are balancing ourselves out, it's about learning how to manage those times where we get very self-critical, because that self-criticism is a valuable part of becoming discerning and using decision-making skills and all sorts of skills. So it's learning how to bring extreme self-criticism into a place where you can use it, because it's very powerful when you can balance it out and use it for your discernment, for your decision-making skills, for all. There are so many traits and skills that you can get out of being very critical. So it's bringing the very critical into a place of manageability, not eliminating it. And when you learn how to manage your criticisms, your heart opens. It's beautiful.
Jenetta, I really value you, and I love this conversation that we had today. Who knew where it was going to go? I feel like we were very transparent, and hopefully the audience got some value out of it. Tell our viewers and listeners how you can help them. Obviously, you shared a zillion ways today that you can help them, but the services that you offer and how they can hire you and work with you.
Thank you, Dr. JACALYN. Well, it would be an honor and pleasure to give you this gift, because I have not looked back. From losing family members, one to suicide, a daughter to suicide, to much loss in my life, from cancer, as I mentioned. If I hadn't had this, I don't know where I'd be now. I'd probably be a basket case. And it's in being able to use these very, very accurate skills and techniques that the epiphany process offers that I've been able to live a life that I'm living, where I'm mostly on track, mostly going, thank you, thank you, thank you. And when I'm not, understanding the value of not always being on track, and then taking it and bringing that back into manageability. So if you would like a piece of this or a whole amount of this that I can show you and share with you, and give you the skills and techniques to bring yourself back to open-hearted understanding and appreciation of yourself, which starts new, accurate, internal and external conversations with yourself and others. If you'd like to know more about that, you can get hold of me. I'm on theepiphanyprocess.com. I'm contactable there. And I'm also at JENETTA at theepiphanyprocess.com. So that's JENETTA at theepiphanyprocess.com. And I've helped so many people who were at the end of their tethers, some of them even planning to leave this planet, others just sitting on that couch. Because bet your bottom dollar, if only thing you're valuing is sitting on a couch, it means that you haven't accessed your values, and it takes all your energy away when you're not in your true genius. So if you'd like to know how to find out what your values are and how to access them and attach them to other people's values so that they love and appreciate you for you being who you are, contact me.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. I really enjoyed this, and thank your neighbor for assisting with the technology today. All right, I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yes, lots of love. As always, love spending time discussing things like this with you. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you. So are you. So important. Okay, bye for now. And thank you to each and every one of you, whether you're watching or listening or the live or the replay. We really do appreciate it. Our next show is coming up. It's the United Kingdom News and Culture. That's followed by a brand new show that we have starting today called I'm Spiritual, But. And we have two new team members, Ann Scotland and Dr. Roger Leslie, who are hosting that program. And that will be followed by the Earth Show. And then we have the Mallorca Connection, and we have Wild at Heart. So it's a full day of programming. You know where to find me. Okay, thank you again. We'll be back shortly with our next program. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is USA Global TV. We will see you soon. Bye.